In a faraway land, nestled between two great rolling hills and surrounded by a wide, sparkling river, there was a peaceful African village. The villagers were simple folk, known for their hard-working spirit, their colorful festivals, and their love for storytelling around the fire. But in this village, there lived one woman whose storytelling did not wait for the evening fire. Her name was Abeni. Abeni was a beautiful woman with a laugh as loud as a village drum and a tongue that never seemed to rest. She could speak from sunrise to sunset without stopping to breathe, and if there was news, big or small, you could be sure Abeni knew it first and told it first. If a chicken laid an egg, Abeni knew which chicken, how many eggs, and whether the hen was proud of herself. If a pot cracked on someone's cooking fire, Abeni could tell you who dropped it, why it cracked, and what meal had been cooking inside it. The problem was, Abeni never knew how to keep what she heard to herself. If words were food, Abeni's mouth was always full, and she never seemed to choke. Her husband, Juma, was a quiet fisherman who spent his days by the river. He loved his wife dearly, but often shook his head at her talkative nature. Many evenings, as they sat by the fire, he would sigh and say, "Abeni, one day your tongue will get you into trouble. A word once spoken is like a stone thrown into a pond. You never know how far the ripples will spread." And Abeni would laugh heartily, toss her head, and reply, "Oh, Juma, talking never hurt anyone. Besides, it's better to speak than to keep silent like a stone." Juma could only shake his head, knowing that his wife's mouth was like a waterfall. Once it began to flow, there was no stopping it. As the seasons passed, the time came for the annual Harvest Festival, a grand celebration filled with singing, dancing, feasting, and laughter. This year, the chief had planned something special. He wanted to invite the neighboring village to join the festivities and strengthen the bond of friendship between their two communities. The entire village was buzzing with excitement. Men were building stages and polishing drums. Women were pounding yams and stirring giant pots of stew, and children were rehearsing their dances and songs. Of course, Abeni saw this festival as the perfect opportunity to gather more gossip than ever before. She went from hut to hut under the excuse of helping, but in truth, her ears were always wide open, collecting stories like a bee collects nectar. At the riverbank, she gossiped with other women while washing clothes. In the marketplace, she accidentally lingered near stalls just to overhear conversations. And when people were too quiet, she would gently poke and prod them with questions until they revealed some little secret. The villagers were amused at first, but some began to grow wary of her endless chatter. One old woman shook her head and muttered that Abeni's tongue will bring us misfortune one day. Mark my words. On the day before the festival, something important was happening. Two of the chief's most trusted men met at the edge of the marketplace to discuss the journey of a messenger who was to travel to the neighboring village. The messenger carried a very important peace letter to ensure the two villages would celebrate together in harmony. The men spoke in low, serious voices, careful not to alarm anyone. But unfortunately, Abeni was nearby. She wasn't even trying to eavesdrop. At first, she was buying fish for the evening meal, when a few words floated to her sharp ears. Protect, messenger, trouble, conflict. That was all she heard. But for Abeni, a few words were enough to create an entire story. Her eyes widened, her jaw dropped, and her mind raced. "Ah, so that's it," she thought. "The chief is sending a secret message to prepare for war with the neighboring village." Her heart beat fast, not with fear, but with excitement. "Oh, ho, ho," she giggled. "This is the juiciest piece of news I have ever heard. I must tell everyone before the sun sets." And off she ran, leaving her fish behind and almost knocking over a basket of mangoes in her haste. By the time the sun touched the horizon, the entire village was buzzing, not with festival songs, but with panic. Abeni had run from house to house, whispering her misheard truth, with wild hand gestures and dramatic expressions. "The chief has a plan to attack the neighboring village," she told one group. "The neighboring village will strike first if we don't strike them," she told another. With each retelling, the story grew bigger and more frightening. Somehow, by the time she reached the last house, the tale had grown to include elephants burning huts and spies hiding among them. Fear spread like fire in the dry season. Men grabbed their spears and sharpened them by the firelight. Women packed food and tied up chickens and goats, ready to flee. Children cried, clinging to their mothers. The once peaceful village was now a scene of chaos. One man even painted his face for war, though he had never fought in a battle in his life. Another mistakenly packed a pot of porridge instead of his belongings, yelling, "At least we will have food on the run." The festival that was supposed to unite the villages now seemed doomed before it even began. The next morning, the chief woke up to a strange sound, shouting, clanging, and the unmistakable cry of someone yelling, "The enemy is coming." Confused and alarmed, he rushed to the village square, and what he saw almost made him faint. Men stood ready with weapons, women were running in circles, and even the chickens seemed confused by the commotion. In the middle of it all, Abeni stood proudly, hands on her hips, as if she were the village hero. The chief roared, "What is the meaning of this madness?" The villagers turned as one and pointed to Abeni. It was her. Abeni said the neighboring village plans to attack. The chief's eyes narrowed. Abeni stepped forward. For the first time in her life, Abeni's tongue faltered. She stammered as she tried to explain. I only told them what I heard yesterday at the market." The chief immediately called for the two men who had been speaking. They explained calmly that there had been no talk of war, only of protecting the messenger, so he could safely deliver a peace letter. The crowd gasped. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. The villagers turned to glare at Abeni. Mothers who had spent the night packing glared with tired eyes. Warriors who had sharpened spears for nothing scowled in anger, and children peeked from behind their parents, confused and frightened. Abeni's knees trembled. For once, her tongue had truly betrayed her. The lesson of the feathers. The chief took a deep breath and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Abeni, your tongue has caused fear and nearly destroyed the peace between our villages. Today, you must learn a lesson you will never forget." He held out a soft pillow filled with feathers and handed it to her. "Take this pillow to the top of the hill," he instructed, "and scatter all the feathers in the wind." Abeni, relieved that this seemed like an easy task, hurried up the hill. She tore open the pillow and tossed the feathers high into the air, laughing as they swirled and floated away. When she returned, the chief gave her a stern look and said, "Now, go and gather every single feather and put them back into the pillow." Abeni's mouth fell open. "That's impossible. The wind has carried them far and wide." The chief nodded. "Exactly, just like your words. Once spoken, they travel farther than you can imagine, and you can never take them back." The villagers murmured in agreement. Abeni hung her head in shame. Just then, the neighboring village arrived, dressed in bright festival clothes and carrying gifts of food and drums. But when they saw the weapons and tense faces, they stopped in confusion. Their chief asked cautiously, "We came to celebrate peace, but it seems you were preparing for war?" Embarrassed, the village chief explained the misunderstanding. Laughter erupted when the neighboring chief realized what had happened. "All this trouble because of one woman's tongue," he chuckled. The festival went on as planned, though Abeni spent the day quietly serving food and avoiding everyone's gaze. For the first time, she listened more than she spoke. By evening, the sound of drums and laughter filled the air. Two villages danced together under the stars, thankful that peace had been restored. Abeni's redemption. In the weeks that followed, Abeni worked hard to regain the trust of her neighbors. She used her voice not to spread rumors, but to share encouragement and truth. Slowly, the villagers began to forgive her. Years later, Abeni became known as a wise woman. People traveled from faraway places to hear her advice, for she had learned the power of words through painful experience. Whenever young children gathered at her feet, eager for stories, she would end with this lesson. "My children, words like feathers. Once released into the wind, you cannot gather them back. Speak with care, for your tongue can destroy or heal." And the children would repeat after her in unison, "Think before you speak." And so, the tale of Abeni, the woman who could not hold her tongue, was passed down from generation to generation. Her story became a warning, a reminder that gossip may seem harmless, but it has the power to create storms where there were once calm waters. As the old proverb says, the tongue has no bones, but it is strong enough to break a heart.